All right. Good. Oh my. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabriel. First things first. It's definitely crossed your head. I just wanted to bring this up. It's a very special announcement. I think the previous speaker, his name was Mel. We were discussing this. Who in the audience actually agrees with us and say he actually looks like Roger Federer? Just keep it in your head right now. Right now. Right? He does. Same nose and everything like that. Yeah. I think Ethereum does better than tennis and Uniqlo. Anyway, very quickly, thank everyone for staying. I'm from Singapore. The sun is literally still up right now if it's like 6:30 and everything like that. I came in here, it's 5. It's pitch black and everything like that. Based in Singapore, born in Singapore. I've been in tech. I've been organizing tech conferences and I've been involved in tech media in my part of the world. That's how I know actually Roland and Antonio as well. I've been involved in it for more than a decade. Most recent exploits is I'm part of a company called Blockshow. Blockshow is a blockchain conference that we run out of Singapore, right? That just happened literally on Thursday, Friday. It's enough about me. It's not about me. It's about these 3 fine gentlemen over here on my left. Roland, very quickly, 1 minute. What do you do? Where are you from? Just for everybody's benefit.
Thank you, Gabriel. Cheers, everyone. I'm enjoying myself. Hope you all are also. Fantastic drinks. If I'm slurring my words, these are really awesome.
And jet lagged. And jet lagged. We're both jet lagged, by the way. Yeah.
So again, thank you, Ivan, Nicola, for this amazing conference. My name is Roland, and I'm the managing partner of a venture capital fund called CoCoon Ignite Ventures. We invest in seed stage technologies all around the world. We've just actually done deploying most of our first fund, and we're in the process of raising for our second fund.
All right. Kreso?
Okay, I'm the only one not drinking, so I'll be speaking mostly. Thank you. Lovely assistant. I come from Infobip. We are a cloud communications provider. Opened our 65th offices in Ivan's hometown last week in Split. Big applause for Split. And we help our clients send any type of message to communicate with their end users, email, SMS, voice, you name it, we have it. And lately we are entering into the SaaS space with conversation, chatbots, and identity.
Antonio?
Hi, I'm Antonio Separovic, co-founder and have the privilege of being CEO of Oradian. Oradian is a cloud-based core banking system focused at emerging markets. Our biggest markets are Philippines, followed by Nigeria, and we're now in 12 different countries. And we're based in Zagreb.
Right. So before we start off, just for everybody's benefit, it's not shown here, but anyway, we're going to be talking about scalability. So we've got a very unique, I would say, combination, right? Obviously, from Roland, you look at scalability, you provide the money and in ways the connections to make that happen for your portfolio companies. I think, Kreso, your situation is a little bit unique in that you guys have not actually taken any outside money. You guys are pure P&L unicorn, yeah, right? And you guys have 65 offices. 65 offices. And you're based in Zagreb, but your first feet on the ground from a business perspective is Nigeria. Obviously, you've got Philippines, and you've got 10 other countries as well, which you guys have literally boots on the ground, right? Indonesia, yes, no, not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. So I just want to start off with a very, very, very broad stroke type of question. When we talk about scalability, right? And more for Kreso and Antonio for now. When did you guys decide that it is time to scale? Like, the reason I ask, right, is there's always a internal discussion that we should get the house right first instead of scaling too aggressively. If you scale too aggressively, you face a lot of challenges, and we'll get to that in a bit. But at what point did you guys decide that, you know what, we need to scale, like we need to move more markets? Even in Kreso's case, we need to offer more products as well, right? At which point, what's the tipping point, just based on memory?
Basically, it's on a daily basis, actually. So although we are 2000, we are quite a startup mentality. We are trying to keep it a startup. So our main motto is we are just starting. So everything we are doing, we are approaching with this motto. So okay, opening a new office, let's go Nigeria, we are just starting there. Then we conquer the whole Africa. Then go to LATAM, we are just starting. We onboard, I don't know, Facebook as a client, okay, great, sending huge amount of messages, few billions per month, we are just starting, onboarding WhatsApp as a channel, so on. So that's the mentality which is driving us all the way, and I would like to emphasize this startup mentality. There is a lot of startups here. Keep that mentality that pushes you forward. And
How many of you over here actually are physically running a startup right now? Just show of hands, please. What in the world does the rest of you do? You guys have real jobs. I like it. I want to have one of those as well. Amazing. Right. So okay, but let's talk about since most of the people are not running a startup. Wait, rephrase. So you're not running a startup. Are you working in a startup? Not that many. You're lying. So anyway, let's talk a bit about that startup mentality, because this audience is probably not from there. What exactly do you mean by a startup mentality? This disrupting, breaking things, or you know, what exactly is that definition very quickly of that when you mention startup mentality?
yeah, you use the F word, which is disruption. Basically, we've experienced disruption in the telco industry, in the retail industry, travel and transportation, and so on. And the finance has been disrupted just now as we are speaking. And in order to be a disruptor and not be disrupted, you need to be a startup. You need to focus on customer experience, you need to focus on speed, and you need to focus on innovation. And basically, those are the three ingredients which a good startup or a successful startup must incorporate in their culture if they want to succeed. And you can find examples with Uber, which was innovative in the business model, had an excellent customer experience. You today have, I know, Revolut, TransferWise, and those guys which are, again, innovative and both in business, both in tech. So that's the ingredient for...
Roland, would you consider Uber and Revolut as good examples? I mean, based on your experience, you've been looking at, you look at what, like 50 startups a month at least, right? Taking out CoCoon pitch and everything else. It's that, what kind of mentality what do you define as startup mentality based on that?
Well, I can certainly speak to Uber or speak about Uber more so than Revolut. I had the fortunate opportunity to sit down with Garrett Kemp, I guess the less famous co-founder of Uber, together with Travis. And I think the one thing that struck me the most is the simplicity in which he can explain such an extraordinary vision. And I think that idea of, when we talk about passion and finding something disruptive, he is able to simplify a problem statement into something that can actually expand horizontally into many categories. So what Garrett actually told me directly back then was, for him, he just wanted to find magic in the ability of pressing a button on your phone. So the whole idea that if I press a button on my phone, one button, nothing else, I press a button and something happens, is actually the DNA behind Uber. And so based on that, the governance and the culture, I think, is a separate issue. But if we're going to focus on the vision and the mission of what they're trying to deliver in terms of simplicity and value-added services, and really just focus on that core of creating magic through that simplicity, I think that kind of attitude is very much, different to a more established corporate where, you have big meetings, all that kind of stuff, and you end up with very complicated strategies and whatnot, who no one knows what the hell you're talking about, versus these new companies that say, we're going to create a company where we press a button and magic happens. So I think that's just completely different ways.
And it makes scalability easy as well, because it's like it becomes a UX question, right?
Well, it's the scalability question is already baked into that. If it's something that easy for you to understand,
it doesn't matter where it's used.
Exactly, and therefore, as a company, I remember him saying that it's not a taxi company, as everyone called it in the beginning. It's not a transport company. It's a company where you press a button and something happens. And I think that's quite beautiful in inspiring not only your customers, but also your staff and your company to work towards that vision.
And so, Antonio, so you're in a bit of a different situation, uniquely different situation when it comes to that discussion on scalability, right? How do you then look at these markets, and what are your if you can just nail it down to like 3 things to consider, what would it be, or what would it need to have for you to decide when it comes to scale?
So we went through kind of a weird experience, or I went through an experience, rather say that, is that when we started the business, we were very opportunistic, and any country that wanted, or any customer from any country who wanted to work with us, we jumped on the opportunity. And next thing, we found ourselves in over 10 countries, and one of them uniquely was the Philippines. And because it was such a wide time zone, it forced us to be disciplined to focus, because we were going to burn out, like working extensive hours. And that focus ended up turning the Philippines into representing over 75% of our business. And so what I learned through that experience is scaling is not about going wide. Scaling is purely about focus. And so the lessons that I learned is get down to understand what are you solving. Understand is it getting a product market fit. And focusing down, like even in the Philippines, we focus into one segment. And that's where, kind of to steal your words here, is that's where the magic happens. And next thing you know, we have 50 financial institutions on our core banking system in one country. And so when we're looking at our next market segment, we're making sure we land and expand within the Philippines. And now we've got our next sites on the next one, and we want to replicate that whole model. And in that process, I've learned that to scale, you've got to say no about 500 times a day. Everyone's coming with ideas, everyone's distracted, when you run into a problem, it's easier to go solve something else. And you've got to have the discipline to say, no, this is where we're going, this is what we've got to do, and keep it simple. So for me, by applying all the rules that feel illogical, you actually start scaling quickly. And I think that's an interesting thing.
But it's also a very hands-on approach, right? Which means that if you want to scale, and your form of scaling is really like a laser-sighted focus type of scaling, and that's how you got the financial institutions on board and everything as well. So it's a very hands-on. So basically, what you're saying is that this model could be potentially replicated city by city, country by country, as you guys scale.
Yes, and I think the other thing that's an antidote I've heard is nail it before you scale it.
Yes.
So before, and this is what I found, is we're trying to do too many things, whereas now we're doing less things to getting that right, and that's easy to replicate. So when we go to Indonesia, we'll replicate what we did in the Philippines. When we choose our next market to go in, we'll replicate that. And so that's the thing, rather than trying to address every opportunity. And I think that's the lesson that we went through to kind of get to where we are right now. So ironically, we're doing less and getting better results.
Roland, what do you think about this? And Kreso, I'll come back to you on this as well. But you've heard, we're basically from Asia, right? Southeast Asia. You cover obviously Hong Kong, China, some parts of Silicon Valley, etc. It's where do you think is this, like whatever Antonio has said with the scaling thing, top-down approach and everything like that. Any comments? Right, wrong? Is there another way about it? I mean, everybody who comes to you says, I need your money and your connections so I can scale, right? And where do you guys fit into all of this, if you even fit into any of this?
So the angle we like to take as a fund in looking at cost of scalability is not really scalability in itself, but the cost of it, and therefore how viable is it for financiers like ourselves to finance and fund the scalability. We just look at the fundamentals and go back to the basics. So when we talk about Asia, the beauty about the entire region is actually how underdeveloped a lot of the basic infrastructure is. There's so many stories to talk about China's advancement in technology because the fact that they're able to leapfrog, meaning that they can skip a lot of innovation cycles and kind of jump in, kind of leap ahead because they don't have to deal with so many legacy things. And so that fundamental, and looking very closely at each country within Asia to understand what are the common missing parts in each of these places, and therefore if you build one, you build for all, and therefore the financing of it may not be, it's not always the case, but may not be as expensive as one thinks, is a very attractive proposition for venture capital like us. I mean, an example of where this gets exciting is we're here at the FinTech conference, and we talk about the money systems and how, there's so many unbanked people, there's so many people that don't have access to your traditional services. So all these opportunities that great entrepreneurs that I'm sharing here on stage are doing is basically being able to create all these digital solutions, all these cloud-based banks, and completely not have to worry about any incumbents in the space. So I would happily back a company like that, knowing that it won't cost me as much as developing the same thing in a much more developed market like Europe or the US.
Or like Singapore.
Or Singapore. Yeah.
Or Singapore. Singapore's a very good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kreso, I mean, you guys are so P&L based, right? Most of the time, the startup's convenient excuse or reason, I would say, of not scaling, it's always because we don't have the money, right? We need that, I don't know, let's use Uber, we need that $5 billion in the bank before we can go to another, I don't know, 500 solar systems or something like that, in order to scale. But how do you guys, I mean, you mentioned you have a very startup mentality, but let's break it down a little bit. I'm always very curious about this even from the businesses which I used to be part of as well. How do the financial side of things actually look when you talk about scaling? Like, you've got money set aside. It's basically, I make X amount, I'm going to set this aside for whatever it is, and this side is going to be on scalability and everything. So it's a risk you take on a P&L, right? Essentially,
but it comes to the startup mentality again. As a startup, you have, you're taking care of your finances quite strongly.
A lot of startups are terrible with taking care of their finances.
Yeah, but you're taking care of the money you're spending, basically, and that's the success, that you're always looking to be profitable along the way. Yeah. That's the main thing. I would like to get back to the pivoting stuff, how to scale actually. We also, when we opened countries, we pivoted several models. We were not successful, we failed. But then we found the model, and then we copied to multiple countries, to 65 countries. And that's the way to succeed. Actually, you need to adapt to cultural differences, to local markets and so on, but that's the way how to proceed. And regarding we are not financial institutions, so we do not offer financial help to our clients, but we help them grow. We help fintechs grow. We acquired WhatsApp, they had like 14,000 clients, end users, now they have 2 billion. And we were part of it because we help them solve their problems. And that's basically the key to success, is that you understand what is your client's problem and you help them solving that. In that way, you will be able to help them grow. Right. Same thing that the VCs are doing in a different way. We are doing it by offering them communication services.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of VCs that don't really help. They say they help, but they just put money and then they just don't do anything. It's I don't know name names. Even if I name names, you guys may not know because they're all based in Asia. One of them, fortunately or unfortunately, is not Roland. Yeah, it comes down to one of the things, right? I think the role of an investor has changed. My lack of understanding, I apologize about Europe. I will have to use a very Asian example. 8-10 years ago, VC is a very, very simple job, right? You have money to deploy, you have funds to deploy. You just have to pick the winners, right? You have a lot of follow-on funding, a lot of people doing the lead round. So what happens is that you get, like of a better example, you get a Singtel Innovate, which is one of the largest telcos in Singapore and Australia. They have their own VC fund. If they say, I'm going to invest into this, the other 4 other VCs will say, yeah, I'm just going to do the same as well, right? No strategy, completely brainless, don't need data scientists and all these kind of things. But I think the game has evolved in that there's a lot of people and money. There's a lot of people and money, and then now the PE people are in, and then you've got the corporate finances are in, then you've got the family offices that are in and everything. And it's more than just, and it's become more than just money, right? Everybody can write $1 million check, right? Not everybody, but like a substantial amount of people can write $1 million check today.
Can you? To me?
Maybe.
Personal.
Sure.
There's speakers dinner at 8 p.m. I think a very interesting conversation is going to happen there, but yes. Okay, this comment is really about a conversation Roland and I had a very long time ago, which is, it's not just about the money, but it's also the connections and the relationships that the investor or the partner actually brings to the table. Yeah. That's more important than actually just having the money, right? Yeah. Maybe explain to everybody a little bit more And I know you guys have been looking into Europe as well, and what are the observations around this?
The way we look at markets and understanding it in early stage investments, a lot of what I learned, so my background is in traditional corporate finance. I did fundraising for late stage companies, mid stage, took them public, took them private, mergers and acquisitions, all that kind of stuff. So I used to think that applying that kind of skill set in investing in early stage companies was very similar. It's the same principles. You finance something, you work at your governance and watch the equity grow, and that's where we take our profit. But I actually borrow an idea from Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, about how to actually understand an ecosystem in investing it, and therefore understand how you approach that system and therefore scale within that ecosystem. And what he said was, one of the key things in understanding the ecosystem is understanding the cultural currency of a place. So the example he gave was, in the United States, if you're in Los Angeles, the cultural currency is, who do you know? If you're in New York, the cultural currency is which Wall Street bank do you work in, or where in Wall Street do you work? And if you're in Boston, the cultural currency is what book are you reading, which philosopher are you following? And finally, in San Francisco, the cultural currency is what are you solving? The reason why this concept matters a lot is that translates into the appetite and mood of that given city and that given place. What attracts them? What kind of industries are going to be built out? And therefore, the adoption of these new ideas is a lot easier. Taking that concept and translating it to Asia, where we think a lot of opportunity is because it's very underdeveloped, is increasingly difficult. Because unlike a single market like the United States, the cultural currency in each of these places is already very different, let alone within a country, there's also its own cultural currency. So therefore, as VCs, writing that check alone without having a deep understanding of what drives the people, beyond money, beyond success, but the nuances, the details, how do people live day to day? How do they spend money? How do they think about their banks? I promise you it's different in every single country in Asia. What the end result, what they do is the same, but the way they approach it is very different. So therefore, to go back to why writing a check isn't enough and we have to be more active is most of our job is part finance, so getting a solid business model, getting the balance sheet correctly, your income statement correctly, and the other side of it is psychological. It's when founders go into certain new markets or even trying to expand within the market, the psychological effect of why is something not working? I mean, I'm assuming the product works, but the adoption, the culture, what is it that we need to do to create the UI, UX so this becomes acceptable within a society? That part of the work, there's no playbook, there's no precedent. You just have to get down, get dirty, get your hands involved, and just figure it out. And that is actually, funnily enough, not a money problem. We actually really hate it when people say, with money we can scale. To have a conversation with your customers, knowing your client and what they need, as mentioned by the panelists here, that doesn't cost money, it costs time and asking the right questions. So therefore, writing the check absolutely is not the only way of going about it. You need to get down on the ground and figure out what that cultural currency of that market is in order for you to expand and scale.
Kreso, how do you convince, you brought some good points. So for Kreso, it's like, how do you actually get, everybody talks about external factors. You mentioned a lot of external factors. Kreso, how do you get then the internal team, the guys with the startup mentality and all this, how do you actually keep them motivated? How do they actually consider, scaling it's a very big, broad stroke word, right? How do you actually get down to the intricate details and actually getting the team to buy in? Just from personal experience, right? Like about how do you actually convince them that, look, these are the markets we have to go to within like 1 calendar year.
Very nice question. Next question, please. No, it comes to the startup mentality again. We are just starting, so we have a really strong culture inside Infobip, and we are employing people. We are trying that they first of all fit into the culture, and then we are looking at of course the expertise is equally important, but the culture is one of the 2 ingredients for our success. And basically, when it's like that, when you are just starting all the time, where you are eager to win, it's easier to work, it's easier to open new markets, it's easier to launch new products and so on. So that's like a positive, it's like, if you look at it in the sports, it's a team who is always trying to win. It's the same thing that we are trying to do. Okay, we are launching a new product, we want to be successful, we want to beat somebody of our competitors and so on and so on. And we are trying to get the ideas from our clients. That's the other thing. And agility is actually what I mentioned as a part of a successful startup. Being agile is super important. And we started, and agile is part of engineering, wording, and so on. And we introduced agile way of thinking into our engineering, and we were like, okay, that's great, we succeeded. Then we said, okay, why don't we introduce it into sales, marketing, these things, these departments. And we succeeded, and we were like, oh, great. And then we said, okay, let's try with the bastions, the old conservative departments, finance, legal, and we succeeded there as well.
So how big is the Asia, just curious, how big is the Asia business right now compared to the European business?
It's huge, it's growing, and it's generating innovation for us, which is super important. So
which key markets are like, if you talk about Asia, which are the like top 3, for example, are the ones you see?
By actual size of the country, if you, India, Indonesia, China, Vietnam.
And you guys are there already?
Sorry?
You guys are in China, Indonesia already? Or?
Yeah, China is specific, so we are working there with companies for their, not internal traffic, but external, but we are there as well. So
all right.
And South APAC is start to generate ideas. So we used to go to San Francisco to get ideas there for new products, for go-to-market strategies.
Yep.
Today we are looking at Asia, what Asia is doing. You have TikTok today, which is the best example of innovation, and they are beating Instagram, actually. Instagram is starting to copy TikTok.
Yes, it is. Instagram and TikTok are huge. TikTok is beyond huge. Roland has the insights to that one, about that. And we'll come to that in a little bit. If we still have time, we'll talk a little bit about that one. I think TikTok's a very, very good example when it talks about scaling, especially a Chinese company going to the US. Antonio, Roland mentioned Paul Graham and basically quoted him, inspired him. What are the people or lessons or mentors or something like that you look at when it comes to scaling? Who inspires you? Whose playbook do you read and everything?
I think we're in the category of Boston. You read a whole lot of things as much as possible.
That's why we don't want to live in Boston. We've got other things to do.
But I think you take these different concepts and you read a lot of them. I mean, right now I'm like gung-ho on crossing the chasm, Jeffrey Moore. But the other flip side is getting down local. And that's also really important, is getting to understand this local culture.
Being physically there.
Physically there and solving that problem and getting that cultural capital within the Philippines. And this is the lessons we learned is when you start focusing and rather going, I mean, we're small. We're 110 people. So you're limited with resources. You've got money, but it doesn't mean you can spend it. You've got to figure out how to solve these problems. Because you want the money, when you solve the problem, you want to put a foot on the gas. And one of the interesting things is actually just getting really down at an operational level and starting to find influences there. And what are they thinking? How are you solving their problems? Because once you start solving their problems, and you focus your marketing effort into one, but they become the evangelist of the product. Next thing you know, they are spreading the news about their success. Then you start having inbound velocity. And I think that's really what's important, is that it's not just about who do you follow, but it's how do you make evangelists of those you touch. And for me, that's really important. And so in the Philippines, for example, it's quite interesting. It's known as one of the most emotional countries in the world. They are the highest consumers of Facebook, like the average person is 4 hours. And so there we learned is like, forget about LinkedIn, focus on Facebook. So
yes.
you start shifting what you need to do there. And when you make your customers, the users of your system, the heroes, then they start inspiring you. And they are the evangelists themselves. So it's good to take, from the top down, you work with investors, and I agree, there's so much money out there. And it's easy to get money if you're doing well. But what you do is, how do you get smart money? And how do you get that smart money to help you to focus on the business? So that's a critical thing. And then working from the ground up is solve customers' problems. And that's where the success comes. And then you scale that. You don't scale by trying to do more sales. You solve problems at scale.
And speaking, I mean, I'm glad, Antonio, you brought up that Facebook dominance in the Philippines. So I'm currently advising the Uber of the Philippines, and we're trying to figure out how to scale in the Philippines. How do you
Basically, Gojek, right?
Gojek, Uber, so basically like the ride-hailing super apps that you can do everything on. And in trying to figure out that market, and why is Facebook so dominant? As investors, the top-down approach, what we learned as an example to how each market's very different, and if you find that secret sauce, you can dominate that market. The one thing that we noticed is the micro-consumption of the mass market in the Philippines. What does that mean? Most of the people there, the mass middle class, middle to lower class, do not have bulk money with them. They make money maybe on a daily or weekly basis. They consume that money that they make, so they're unable to save up a bulk amount of money. Therefore, the majority in the middle to lower class of the market can only afford weekly consumption of things. Yes. That's why there in the Philippines, you'll find a lot of things like little shampoos all being sold, little toothpaste. Not that they don't have a choice.
It's like a traveler size.
Travel size, because they can't afford the big one. And the same thing goes with, as far as we understand, the telco data. Whereas most of us enjoy monthly plans and we pay as such, a lot of people there, because of that micro-consumption, can't pay. So therefore, Facebook very smartly came in and said, okay, you know what? I will subsidize your mobile data. So I will come in, I will work with the telcos, I will pay them, and in return, the telcos will provide free data to you, but only for Facebook. Therefore, a lot of people in the Philippines believe that the internet is Facebook because of this phenomenon. So as an investor job in advising my company, my first question is, which telco do we talk to? What deal do we cut? How do we offer free data to these people? And how does a small startup, therefore, also compete with Facebook in that market, because we can then subsidize mobile data? This is something that I didn't appreciate first looking at the market, because I assumed monthly data plans, that's the norm for everyone. But once you go into the localized detail, understand the local economy, then you realize your strategy of cornering and dominating a market could be quite different, and also could be quite fun to do.
Yeah, I do agree. It's not just Philippines as well. I think we saw it with like Indonesia and the Nexian phones as well. We saw the same thing with
most
Thailand.
people in Myanmar don't understand what internet is. They actually think the internet is Facebook.
Yeah.
And Uber and the other likes, they just can't get in there because it's completely monopolized because of this internet.org strategy.
I mean, like, instead, like, for example, a lot of us, like in Singapore, right, or even in Malaysia, Hong Kong, we call it what's called mobile data. They don't even call it mobile data. They never use the word. To them, it's internet.
Yeah.
Simple as that. It's just internet, right? Everything which they use is the internet. Facebook is the internet, right? WhatsApp is the SMS. You know, they don't even know SMS anymore, right? Because all this was pre-installed on the phones as well. So that's one consideration. We've got about 11 minutes left. I actually don't know the rules of shift. Do we allow audiences to ask questions? Anybody has any questions to ask? You decide. It's your conference. Oh, whatever, these guys, Croatians. Anyway, I can say that. Okay.
Inside voice.
Inside voice. What? Antonio, Kreso, Roland, last question, each and one of you. Well, last two questions. I'll go to the first one first. 2020. Tell me, what does 2020 look like for you? What do you dream of 2020? This isn't Christmas. I want practical. What's your thoughts? It's November. If you've not thought about it, we'll ask you this question on stage again tomorrow as well.
I want Santa Cruz to make my hiring life easier. So right now for 2020, we're focused on acquisition of talent. That's going to be very much about that. Getting ready to scale
Here in Zagreb, or doesn't matter?
We are looking to recruit in all the markets we're in.
Look at them.
Recruiting in all the markets we're in.
Yeah.
Zagreb, Philippines,
Split.
Nigeria, new markets we're going to. We're looking to recruit for all types of positions, and we're looking for individuals to come and help us solve problems in a very creative way. I like to say that we're Champions League, so we've had the luxury to have gained our experience in Europe, and we're playing third division. We're solving problems in emerging markets, and it's a really interesting market because it's the tide is going to come up. This is China has recently demonstrated it's taken 500 million people out of poverty. The next big billion people are going to come out of Southeast Asia in terms of coming into the middle class. The future is Asian, and we need to solve those problems. We need to think about those things. So we're, in terms of our scaling stage, we're recruiting, and so please feel free to reach out to me and help Santa Claus with your CVs.
How are people going to reach out to you? Your contact details on the website. The contact details on the website and everything.
Or after this panel.
All right. Okay. Right. Kreso,
Yes,
2020.
to use the opportunity, we are building our campus in Zagreb, so we are also employing.
Again, please, this way. Look that way.
And hopefully, the wish is that it's going to be completed by end next year, so it's going to be a place for approximately 700 Infobippers. So we are open for jobs. We are also employing in St. Petersburg, in India. We are opening new offices in most probably Katowice, Minsk. We are looking at those countries. And from the product or where we are moving into, we are big on focusing on Asia a lot because again, it's driving the innovation. WeChat is setting the pace in our space, basically with conversational commerce, which is the next big thing where Facebook, Google, and Apple are trying to go in. Basically, once you're in WeChat, you're not leaving it anymore.
Yep.
That's where everybody
WeChat is life in China.
Yeah.
WeChat is life. Yeah. Even I was forced to download WeChat. I purposely stayed away from it, and Roland was telling me for years, you must have WeChat. I finally relented last year. And yes, it is life. Can't do without it, unfortunately, if you go to China. FYI for everybody as well. We talked about...
Roland has to answer the 2020 question.
What?
Do I have to make predictions?
2020.
Well,
You're the VC. VCs make predictions all the time. Do you not read TechCrunch?
so we will be fundraising for our next fund in 2020, and we'll be fundraising off an environment where I think several-fold. Recession is probably going to hit third quarter next year. At the same time, like it or not, Trump is going to win the presidency. I don't think he'll be impeached. What effect will that have on sentiment and market? Generally, I think it'll be positive. And mix that with a recession environment, I think we can sell a story about basically growth in the early stage. So we're just going to hopefully be raising off some fear of some more uncertainty in the late stage and capture that opportunity for ourselves.
Nice. Actually, talking about the WeChat thing, there's something we totally forgot to mention when we talk about scale. The biggest news in Asia right now, Line and Yahoo Japan merging. Yeah, that's going to be another one.
Should I make insider comments about that, or just?
I mean, it's like, sure, it's up to you.
Well,
Okay, first things first. I think you need to explain the Yahoo Japan is not fully owned by Yahoo in the first place.
Yeah, I'm less familiar with the effect of that merger, but more with the WeChat and what the digital payment space means for the whole Asia. In short, I will just say another very exciting development for a lot of fintech companies here is there is a concerted effort, not just from China, but from various Asian players to create a standard system or protocol through which payments of basic services can be made. I'm familiar with one specific project in relation to transportation, with the idea that each and every country within Asia, of course, has their own transport network, but there are several consortiums and partners now trying to build a payment system, basically through which if you hold this physical card or through an app, it doesn't matter what country you're in Asia, every public transportation can be paid with this device, with this hardware. And the implications of that to me is not so much about how much profit you can take off that infrastructure. I would already assume that that's going to be subsidized by some public and private money. But the most interesting thing is once you solve for that, once movement of people, goods, and services becomes that much easier across countries in Asia, then what value can you build on top of that? And so that's being led certainly by some of these big Chinese companies like WeChat.
All right. Okay. All right. 5 minutes. You guys decide. Do we call it a day, or does anybody have any questions for the panelists? Not
Hands.
for me.
I mean, hands up if there are questions. There's one over there.
Got that. sorry, so before you ask the question, also let us know your name and the company as well, so we get some reference as well. We'll not do anything to you, no matter what you ask. Just wanted to put it out there.
Hello, I'm Nicola. I work at FIS, and thanks guys for coming here. I have a question. How would you comment the trend with startups that scaling no matter what? I mean, the companies focus on scale and no to profitability.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
At all costs, doesn't matter what the fundamentals are.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, yeah, if you can just repeat.
Can you please comment the trend with startups that they actually focus on scalability and not profitability? I mean, if you look at Uber, WeWork, Lyft, and so on.
I don't think they're focusing on scalability as much as growth. So it's about, you know, how do you get land grab? How do you maximize the number of customers on your system so that you can then turn into profitability? So it's, you know, in many instances, what you find with these companies is they can choose to go profitable if they stop investing. So if they take the foot off the gas, then they start yielding a result. But I think many tech companies, specifically tech companies, what they're trying to do is get as much growth as possible, capture a bigger segment, and that's why kind of it looks like they're in the red, because they are in the red, but it's because they're investing, not because they're losing money. So I think that it's a fundamental shift in thinking, is that, you know, what are you doing? Are you expanding to get customers versus losing money? What you don't want to be doing is burning money in R&D and not winning customers. So I think it's more about where you apply that money rather than running at a loss.
Yeah, based on our experience, you should be profitable all the way, and you can do great stuff by yourself.
There's a big assumption behind scaling at all costs and being able to rein, you know, if you stop investing, Antonio's absolutely right, that you can rein in profits. Amazon is a very good example of if they stopped certain R&D efforts, they can certainly show profitability quarter on quarter. But the big assumption there is your fundamental unit economics, the stuff that many people on this stage have gone on and on about. It's still solid. Your assumption about the very basic economics, your cost versus what you get in return, no matter how you get it, needs to balance out. And there's no way for you to foresee how that's gonna happen. And you're making very grand assumptions. In the case, I think WeWork and Uber are making very grand assumptions on what could happen to the business model to change the cost and revenue side of the model. Then no matter what you do, these companies will never be profitable unless these grand assumptions, in the case of Uber, self-driving vehicles, eliminating the human factor comes in. Sure, it will be, but will you be betting on that in the next 5 to 10 years? If you ask me, I wouldn't be.
Any more? Calling once, calling twice. All right, so just to sum up the panel, we'll talk about scalability, startup mentality, also smart money is also a very important thing, being on the ground, right? So I think these are 3 things I think everybody can take. I think with that, if anybody has any more final last words, any more last announcements, raising 50 million, no, not today? Okay, oh man. Oh well, can't happen every day, can it? All right, ladies, gentlemen, again, thank you very much, and please thank my panelists as well. Come to the end of day 1. Thank you very much.